The NFL draft is getting closer and closer every day. Today, I'm giving you my top 5 quarterbacks, top 5 to 6 for the 2023 NFL class. I am bringing this from a dynasty football perspective. Do me a favor, drop a like, subscribe if you like dynasty content, and comment down below who is your quarterback sleeper. Who do you think is not getting enough hype or respect as we head into the NFL draft season? Let's get on the same page here for 1 second though, because by far the most difficult position to scout easily for dynasty football is the quarterback position, because there is this unscoutable element of, do you have it? Can you process the game in real time? And we can see that as much as we can through film, through analytics. This is why we see so many bust quarterbacks in the NFL draft each and every year, because there is this unscoutable element of, are they really going to be able to do this at the NFL level? So I will say that we do need to trust NFL GMs and scouts more than our own evaluations. And what does that mean? Well, do these quarterbacks get the draft capital that we anticipate them to, right? How highly do NFL scouts and GMs value these quarterbacks? What sort of landing spot are they heading into, right? What coaching staff is going to be around them for them to try and build their game in the NFL? All these things are very important, and I would argue landing spot, coaching staff, and draft capital. Maybe running backs with draft capital a little bit more important, but more than ever for the quarterback position, ultimately very important. So this list definitely will change. It is fluid, but without further ado, let me give you my quarterback 6, okay? Because I think quarterback 5 and 6 are so close this year. Like, take your pick at this point. But for me, my quarterback 6 is Tanner McKee out of Stanford. He is 6'6", 230 pounds. He's 22 years old, will be 23 as a rookie, 4-star recruit out of California. He, I believe, was the 2nd or 3rd overall quarterback high school recruit in the Trevor Lawrence, Justin Fields high school class. So he was a sought after high school recruit. Went to Stanford and then took 2 years off, I think, doing missions work in Brazil, if I'm not mistaken. So interesting backstory there. At Stanford, it is really difficult to evaluate his film, or more importantly, evaluate the analytics attached to his film, because the team around him was awful. I mean, no playmakers, really average wide receiver play. It was just a really, really bad team all around him, and that makes it difficult to project him into the NFL. But has really good size, 6'6", that Justin Herbert, Trevor Lawrence, Peyton Manning, Mike Glennon type size that NFL GMs are looking for. Good decision maker and avoids turnovers really, really well, takes care of the ball. If you look at turnover worthy plays last year, he was 9th fewest in the country of 110 quarterbacks who had a minimum of 250 dropbacks. And that same metric, turnover worthy play percentage, he only had 1.5% of his plays were turnover worthy plays, 7th fewest in the country. So this is a quarterback, big body, can hang out there in the pocket, let the play develop, and take care of the ball. Now, unfortunately, the production is not there. Like I said, bad offense around him. There's just no, I would be very surprised if anyone from that team is drafted outside of Michael Wilson, but not your modern quarterback that NFL teams are looking for. I feel like 10, 15 years ago, Tanner's probably a 1st-round pick. In today's game, we want these mobile quarterbacks, guys who are multi-dimensional, can get out of the pocket, can improvise, and he's just not a very good improviser, not a rushing quarterback whatsoever. In fact, his run rate, according to PFF, was 88th of 110 quarterbacks this year who had a minimum of 250 dropbacks. So this is not a player that is going to be mobile. You're not going to design run plays for him. And pressures to sacks, as far as like the percentage, 27%. That is 9th worst in the country. So not a good sign. Again, a tall, big, strong quarterback who can easily see over the line of scrimmage, can make the passes, but unfortunately not a modern day ideal quarterback for people to build around. And that might make his draft capital fall. As of right now, he's projected to go in the 2nd round. I see the ceiling of like a Matt Hasselbeck, floor of like a Davis Mills, Jarrett Stidham type player. So there's still potential for him to be a starter, but he's more likely a really good backup in the NFL. At number 5, I have Hendon Hooker out of Tennessee. He is 6'4", 218 pounds. He will be 25 years old as a rookie. We'll talk about that in a second. 4-star recruit, transferred from Virginia Tech to Tennessee. And that definitely elevated his game, landing in the SEC and putting really Tennessee on the map this year. You guys will remember him from Tennessee's really good run to almost get into that college football playoffs, but they fell just short. And obviously his injury. Look, as much as I love Hendon Hooker, I was one of those guys this year, around October, trying to bring recognition to his name, but torn ACL late into the season. He thinks he'll be ready by camp. I don't think so. I don't think he takes an NFL snap either as a backup or a starter until he's 26 years old. That is really tough to project value. And I'm not sure how, again, NFL GMs and scouts will value a player in that position. Maybe he was going to be a second round pick. Maybe he slips into the first if there wasn't an injury. Now that injury, it's really difficult to see where exactly he's going to end up being drafted. I think he ends up in the third round. And if he does, that is not historically good for quarterbacks, especially ones at his age, but has a big, strong body. I like the size. He is not bullied in the pocket, can easily see over the line of scrimmage, not afraid to take contact on the run. That big physical body, we like to see that from our quarterback. Very, very accurate. In fact, he had the 7th highest completion percentage, quarterbacks who had a minimum of 250 dropbacks. And then PFF rated him as the 15th best passer in that same category. Good mobility, great with his legs, can escape the pocket, improvisation. We see all that. In fact, career rushing yards, check this out, over 2,600 rushing yards on the ground and 25 rushing touchdowns for his collegiate career. In the last 4 years, he is averaging over 640 rushing yards and 6 touchdowns on a season. So this is one of those players who can do, he's not just a passing pocket, quarterback. He can get out of the pocket. You can design run plays for him. He's shown great athleticism, quick feet, great agility, just a really well-rounded athlete. His father actually played quarterback at North Carolina A&T. I believe his brother is currently playing quarterback there. He's a multi-sport athlete in high school, good mechanics in the pocket, good footwork. Like you'd like to see it. This is a really sound quarterback who has grown a lot in college. The issue is he's going to be 25 years old as a rookie, recovering from an ACL injury. Was he 26 the first time he touches the field? That's difficult. And also, Tennessee's offensive scheme does not translate very well to the NFL. They had a vertical spread tempo offense, which, again, probably going to have to learn an entire new system like all these quarterbacks, but wasn't necessarily an NFL-friendly offense. If you look at his ceiling, I'm looking at like a Geno Smith type player. That's the kind of player you could be getting, just a couple years younger and recovering from an ACL. My floor, a little bit of like Sam Darnold, shades of Sam Darnold. It's difficult to evaluate this player, but I project him to be a backup quarterback with potential starter upside. I think he is more likely to be a starter than Tanner McKee if it is to work out for him. Projected to go in the 3rd round, so that's a little bit difficult, but I like the player. I just wish he was a couple years younger and didn't have that injury. All right, now we get a tier up. And honestly, from a dynasty perspective, I don't think you really need to even talk or think about any other quarterbacks except for the next 4 guys that I'm going to talk about. I just personally, I find it difficult to see a quarterback playing a big impact in the NFL from 4 downwards. But of course, it is possible. I mean, we see Brock Purdy, in the playoffs this year, so anything is possible, but that was a very specific scenario, and I think these are really the only 4 that, like, there's a huge teardrop here between these next guys. At number 4, some of you will hate that I have him this low, some of you will agree with me. A lot of people are split. It's Will Levis out of Kentucky. He is 6'3", 232 pounds. He is a senior. He will be 24 years old as a rookie, currently 23, former 3-star recruit. He did have to transfer from Penn State to Kentucky. Well, that's what he decided to do. He didn't say he had to, but he did transfer from Penn State to Kentucky. And this is a polarizing prospect in this year's class. You either really love this guy or you don't see it. And for me, someone who has been evaluating his film, the 4 to 5 games that I have watched, which have been a mix of 2021 and 2022. We watched 2021 film as well. I don't see it. I don't get it. I'll go in depth, but if I could sum it up real quickly, he is an incredible athlete, but he is not a good quarterback in my mind. Incredible athlete, but does not play the quarterback position well enough in the NFL. And I am fully prepared to hold my hands up and say, hey, I was wrong. I missed the mark. If there is some sort of quarterback coach combination out there that can bring the best out of him and I miss, then I'll say that I missed. But good arm strength, very good arm strength. Potentially the best in this class. I don't know between him and Anthony Richardson, it's very close, but they both have absolute cannons for an arm. I mean, my guy can probably flick it 50 yards downfield, can make the 60-yard throw. He's got an absolute cannon, no doubt. He's got incredible arm strength, really good size as well for a modern day quarterback. The size that these GMs want for someone who can be a dual threat. I'm not saying he is, I'm saying he has the size to be that dual threat. But, and bear with me here, it's just my opinion. Comment down below if you disagree. There are a lot of things that need improvement. And I often hear people talk about Will Levis as this. He has all the things that you can't teach, right? I mean, he's got the size, he's got the arm strength, and we talk about him as this raw prospect. He's going to be 24 years old. Where did the developing, how did he not develop some of these areas? It's just my opinion. I don't know. We're talking about him as if he's like a Trey Lance prospect coming in super young. Not a lot of starting time. That's just not the same for Will Levis. I don't like the pocket presence. I mean, I think it's really, really subpar. And I know we'll talk about the offensive line, but even recognizing blitzes, adjusting pre-snap, and feeling pressure in the pocket, I don't think he does it very well at all. And he certainly doesn't look confident in the pocket, doesn't show very good footwork. To me, the accuracy is very inconsistent. I mean, I think a lot of the accuracy came from this offense as far as completion percentage, short dump off pass, wide receiver screens, dump offs to the tight end, quick flats, running back curls behind, it's a lot of quick dump off stuff here for Will Levis on film. And in fact, I don't really like how he won in college. I don't like how that translates to the NFL. The first game of film I watched for Will Levis, he had 18 completions in that game. 3 of those passes were for 10 or more yards. 15 of those passes were wide receiver screens, running back dump offs, passes to the flat behind the line of scrimmage. Those were 15 of those 18 completions. And that is a very common trend throughout his film, at least the film that I watched. I think that had a big part to play with his completion percentage, because you look at his completion percentage, it's not bad, 65%. That's actually pretty good. But again, I don't think this is someone who is challenging down the field all that much. And I know not the best weapons, not the best wide receivers, but there are so many things I'm just not on board with. The decision making as well, highly, highly questionable decision making. If you look at his turnover worthy plays, he had 13 turnover worthy plays. Not bad, not great. He had 10 interceptions. So definitely an area to improve upon. I don't think he recognizes pressure well. I don't think he processes the game very well in real time. There are times where players are open and he's either doesn't have the confidence in himself to make the throw, or he sees it too late. The anticipation isn't always there. Late declare. He's going to be 24 years old and there's all these things to work on. And then I keep hearing the offensive line narrative. Well, he had by far and by a landslide the worst offensive line. He was pressured the most of these top 4 guys by a landslide. And I'm here to tell you that's just not true. His offensive line was bad, but it wasn't some landslide when we look at pressure numbers, okay? Let's look at pressure for Will Levis versus the rest of the guys I haven't mentioned yet. All right, total pressures. Will Levis, 127. You can see Bryce Young, AR, they have more, okay? Now I know some of them played more games than each other. So let's look at percentage of dropbacks pressured. Will Levis, 37%. That is high, but Bryce Young also at 33%. Anthony Richardson at 37.5%. So these other guys in this class that we're talking about were pressured just as much as him. It wasn't some sort of landslide, like 20% difference in the amount of pressure that each quarterback saw. And then when I talk about him not recognizing pressure, not being a good improviser, not really being someone that moves out of the pocket to extend a play. Let's look at pressures that turn into sacks. He is by far the worst in this category at 26.8%. To me, that number lines up with my thoughts on him not being very good in the pocket, not recognizing pressure, not being able to change a play pre-snap to recognize a blitz, not being able to break a tackle and then extend the play. More times than not, of any of these top 4 guys, a pressure is turning into a sack for him. And I don't like the escapability, and that the analytic, if anything, just backs up that cause. So for me, I get it. I get the athleticism, I get the body build, I get the arm strength, but I think it's going to have to be a perfect pairing for Will Levis to be worthy of a first round pick. Just a first round pick. I'm not even saying a top 10. I'm saying a first round pick. So maybe this is a video that people clip together later and they're like, this guy was so wrong. I'll hold my hand up. I'll say I'm wrong. I don't see it. People talk about the lack of weapons. I mean, name a quarterback, name a wide receiver on Bryce Young's team this year. I mean, they didn't have a single receiver over 700 yards either. Neither did Anthony Richardson, if I'm not mistaken. So we're working with a similar playing field for some of these players. I know it's different, but if you look at a pro comp, I'm thinking we could see like a young Phillip Rivers, a Tony Romo, my floor much lower, Drew Lock, Carson Wentz. You could put Zach Wilson in there, specifically Drew Lock and Zach Wilson, guys who had big arms but did not process the game very well. So for every Josh Allen, because people want to compare him to Josh Allen, for every Josh Allen, there's a Carson Wentz, a Jake Locker, a Ryan Leaf, a Jamarcus Russell, a Chad Pennington, a Tim Couch, a Rex Grossman, a Jason Campbell, and a Vince Young. These big players who are very athletic, but we're not able to recognize or process the game in real time. And I just don't see that for Will Levis. At number 3, I have Anthony Richardson out of Florida. He is 6'4", 232 pounds. He is a red shirt sophomore. Only 1 year of being a starter. He will be 22 years old as a rookie, 21 by the time he is drafted, a 4-star recruit. When we talk about young, moldable pieces of clay, I get it with Anthony Richardson. 2 years younger than Will Levis, only 1 year as a starter. You could see signs of improvement, but I see it with Anthony Richardson. If you're going to take a shot, I think the shot should be on Richardson. And maybe some people think that's controversial. Let's talk about it. I think he has a very good frame and an incredible rushing ability. We're talking about potentially an elite rushing quarterback in Dynasty football. As a rushing threat, Justin Fields, Cam Newton, the Lamar Jacksons of the world, we could genuinely see, if he starts 17 games, we could see a 1,000-yard rushing season from Anthony Richardson. That might sound crazy to you. Pop on a couple games of his film, you will see this incredibly ridiculous freak runner in the open field. There are times where I'm literally thinking to myself, this is literally Justin Fields right now rushing the ball for the Florida Gators. I mean, extremely difficult to get down, not only in the open field as a rusher, but also in the pocket. He is a difficult quarterback to bring down in the pocket. 6'4", 232, similar to Cam Newton, a little bit lighter than Cam Newton. Similar to Will Levis, very good arm strength, absolute rocket launcher for an arm. This is where I think Will Levis and Anthony Richardson differ a lot. The improvisation, the escapability, okay? As an improviser, Anthony Richardson shows a ton of promise. You see him evading tackles, breaking tackles in the pocket, rolling out left, rolling out right, trying to extend the play. Oftentimes with Will Levis, I see much more of a one read, it's not there, and I'm pulling it down and I'm rushing it. Specifically last year when Wan'Dale Robinson was with him. With Anthony Richardson, I see much more improvisation, escapability, being able to sneak out of the pocket, that big strong body, and also an ability to keep his eyes downfield when he feels pressure. We're talking about a quarterback who is feeling pressure all around him, and he might be moving his body, but his eyes are staying downfield and he is trying to see an open man. I love that in his game. Really good footwork, good focus downfield. Now there's definitely some bad here. the accuracy is rough. I mean, 53% completion percentage this year. That is 104th of 110 quarterbacks. It was really, really bad. Okay, no doubt. It was rough. Rocket arm does not have the touch yet. Doesn't have the touch, the anticipation that we want just yet. Not very good decision making either. He definitely needs to improve that. Was much better in a clean pocket than under pressure. So we like to see that from his game. Completed 60% of his passes in a clean pocket, only 38% under pressure. And for those who are like, oh, Will Levis, Anthony Richardson, what's the difference? I said it before, Richardson's 2 years younger. He only has 1 year of being a starter. And I truly think there is that rushing upside to allow him to develop the rest of his game while you build a team around him. A lot of the reasons that we like Justin Fields on this channel is because that rushing upside allows you to see the superstar he can be while you put other pieces around him and while he develops into being a better passer at the next level. But let's also look at how Anthony Richardson improved from the beginning of the season to the end. All right, weeks 1 to 6 and then weeks 7 to 13. Let's look at this together. 5 passing touchdowns versus 12. 1,100 passing yards versus 13. 7 interceptions versus 2. We improved a lot down the stretch. Rushing yards, we have almost double the rushing yards, right? A little bit less, obviously, but you can see the improvement specifically in the turnovers and making the right decisions. So when I look at Anthony Richardson, the ceiling is very high. Cam Newton, Justin Fields, the Vicks of the world. I know that sounds crazy, but the floor is much, much lower. The Vince Young, Tim Tebow. I know that sounds crazy. Like the range of outcomes with this player, this is the biggest wild card in the entire NFL draft this year, by far. The range of outcomes is top 3 dynasty quarterback or bust probably out of the league in 3 years. There is such a wide range of outcomes. So what I will say is with Will Levis and Anthony Richardson, they carry very similar risk reward. Both can be very good players. Both can be absolute busts. But I think Richardson has the rushing profile, the rushing ability to be a valuable fantasy asset while he figures out the rest of his game. I'm not so sure about that with Will Levis. I know he had an injury this year, but that is why I prefer Anthony Richardson. All right, let's talk about number 2 and number 1. To be clear, personally for me, I think there is a big teardrop as well from Anthony Richardson and Will Levis. I think they're in tier 2. In tier 1, we've got Bryce Young, CJ Stroud. I think there is a big gap between these two players personally. Now, again, I'm still saying A-Rich and Will have the highest upside, but I think their floors are much, much lower. So I think there's a big gap between these two players being NFL quarterbacks. At number 2, I have CJ Stroud out of Ohio State, 6'3", 215, 21 years old, 4-star recruit out of Rancho Cucamonga out of California. I used to live about 20-30 minutes away from there. Always found that to be such an interesting location. Just sounded funny to tell people you were from there. But that Georgia game changed everything for CJ Stroud. I know it's only one game, and I think it is a little bit overvalued, but to be fair, that is the best competition that you can possibly face in college football. That is the biggest test that you could put a prospect against. And he passed with flying colors, A++++. I mean, we talk about a player, timing and anticipation. It is absolutely there for CJ Stroud. Incredible timing, anticipating a route, being on the same page with his receivers, processing the game in real time. CJ can process 1, 2, 3, 4 reads on a single play. Really impressive ability to recognize what the coverage is doing. Good ball placement. I think it was top 10 in big time throws, if I'm not mistaken. Very impressive. Yeah, he had 29 big time throws. That is 6th of 110 quarterbacks. Big time throw percentage was 7%. That is 8th. So very impressive quarterback. Knows where to put the ball. Anticipates really, really well. We're talking about the Joe Burrows of the world. We're talking about the Kurt Warners of the world as far as processing the game in real time. But I do have some concerns. Okay. For CJ Stroud, everything was set up for him to succeed. A lot of these other quarterbacks, that was not the case. Think about it. You have Marvin Harrison Jr., Emeka Egbuka. Okay. Both of those players were top 10 in receiving yards this year. Marvin Harrison was 6th. Emeka Egbuka, off the top of my head, was 9th. We're talking about the best wide receiver duo in all of college football. And we looked at those pressure numbers earlier when we were talking about Will Levis. Those pressure numbers leave a lot of questions to ask about CJ Stroud. He did not face pressure very much at all. Didn't even see 100 pressures on the year. Was only pressured on 23% of his plays. Had a pocket that was kept clean over 76% of the time. So that's not going to be the case in the NFL. Obviously, Big Ten, SEC, there's a difference between some of these guys with their competition, but everything was set up for him to succeed. A program with a long history of successful quarterbacks in college, not so much the NFL. 2 of the best wide receivers, good offensive line, Travion Henderson for a time. So I have some concerns because I don't know how he's going to respond to pressure on a consistent basis in the NFL. And as good as he was as improvising in those off-schedule plays versus Georgia, the rest of his film leaves a lot of question marks. Why wasn't he able to do that at other times? Why was he only able to do it versus Georgia on the biggest, the biggest game of his life, which is good, but you still have some question marks there. And then as a rusher, he's not really going to offer you much, if anything. So I like CJ Stroud. I think the tippy top ceiling, you're looking at a Joe Burrow type player. The floor, Jared Goff, Andy Dalton. That might not sound sexy, but those are good starting quarterbacks in the NFL. So again, I really like CJ Stroud. He is my 1B, if you will. I will put him at 2, but he faced less adversity. I think other guys did a little bit more with less. And then at number 1, I have Bryce Young out of Alabama. I know he's undersized, 6 foot, 194 pounds. Let's see what he weighs in at the combine. We'll see. I think he'll be under 6 foot. I think he'll probably be over 200 pounds. So we'll see what that officially looks like. 5-star recruit out of Santa Ana, California. Heisman winner in 2021, 50 total touchdowns, 2-time All-American. My favorite thing about Bryce Young is the improvisation. This is the type of quarterback that NFL teams, the quarterback play that NFL teams are drooling over. These guys who, if the play breaks down, you can improvise, you can get out of the pocket and find these broken plays down the field. He is incredible at that. We've only been scouting about 3-4 years here on the channel, but this is the best improvising quarterback I've ever watched, ever, as far as like a scout. So it was very, very impressive. I mean, this is what GMs, I think, are looking for. I love the response to pressure as well. We talked about how there's question marks for CJ Stroud and his response to pressure. Well, let me just pile on that a little bit more. Not to devalue CJ, but to tell you why I think Bryce is the quarterback 1. Firstly, he faced 45 more total pressures than CJ Stroud, okay? And only was sacked 4 more times. The percentage of dropbacks that they were pressured, CJ Stroud was pressured 10% less of his dropbacks. He was kept clean 10% more, obviously. And then pressures turned into sacks. Bryce Young did a better job evading sacks and creating on the run than CJ Stroud did. Now, that doesn't mean he's going to do that in college or in the NFL, but his profile to me as a player, I think he is going to be a much better improviser at the next level. And then you look at the numbers that they were both able to put up. Very, very similar. Let's look at Bryce Young versus CJ Stroud this year. Bryce Young, total yards, very similar. Bryce Young had a little bit more. Total touchdowns, very similar. Completion percentage, very similar. Bryce Young, team drop percentage. So did your team help you out? The lower the number, the better your team helped you out. Bryce Young had a higher team drop percentage. One played in the SEC, one played in the Big Ten. So then we look at the weapons around him. I said earlier, does CJ elevate the team around him? Maybe he does, but we don't know for sure. What we do know is Bryce absolutely does elevate the team around him. He put up those kind of numbers that I just showed you, despite not having a single wide receiver over 700 yards. Jermaine Burton, Ja'Cory Brooks, Cameron Latu, Kobe Prentice, not one of these players had over 700 receiving yards. In fact, not a single wide receiver on Bryce Young's team was in the top 115 in receiving yards this year. You heard that right. Not a single wide receiver on Bryce Young's team was in the top 115 for receiving yards. And we talked earlier, CJ Stroud had 2 in the top 10. So when we talk about these guys and their landing spot being so important, like what sort of offensive line are they going to have, what weapons, I would argue that Bryce Young is more landing spot proof than CJ Stroud, because we have already seen he has done more with the least. So I'm a big fan of Bryce Young's game. I like the accuracy, good decision maker, good processor of the game, good pocket presence. Had the first passing grade according to PFF out of 110 quarterbacks who had a minimum of 250 dropbacks. Incredible improviser. I said Wayne Brady levels of improvisation from this kid. He is truly a walking it factor. When I look at pro comps, I'm thinking Drew Brees, Kyler Murray, and my floor is Tua Tagovailoa. Probably going to be the first pick in the NFL draft. We'll see. Maybe he's the second or third. I'm not sure. But this is one of those players who, yes, is massively undersized, but he has been undersized his entire career, and he's won at every level being that size. So I think he knows how to win at this point. I see him as an outlier with the size. I truly do. This, some people have compared him a little bit to Steph Curry being the outlier. I think he's an outlier. I think he's going to be an incredible quarterback in the NFL. So that is my list, my top 5 to 6. Comment down below if you agree or disagree. Like the video, and we'll see you in a future one. All love.
Yo, what's good? Thanks for watching. We got a lot more videos.
A lot more.
If you want more videos.
Watch it.
You can also subscribe.
Right now.
If you want to.
You need to.
And lastly, don't forget that you can sign up to support the show and get exclusive content by going to patreon.com/fantasylandfam.